Aloha everyone, I'm geologist Philip Ong, here with Mr. Dane DuPont of HawaiiTracker.com, bringing you guys another Hawaiian Volcano Tracker update today. We're trying something a little new here with a on-screen display. Sorry if you had a little issue with our first attempt at the stream here earlier, but I think we're all good now. Let us know if you have any issues with our audio or video, and on we go. Today is Thursday, May 5th, 2022. It's been a fairly quiet week on a summit of Kilauea, whose eruption keeps going with its typical pattern. We've had like a short pause this past week, but otherwise not a whole lot of activity. That's different than normal. So we'll review that, and we'll of course discuss questions. And our bonus today is going to be a visual history of the 2018 eruption, which we'll hope to do fairly briefly. Just a kind of intro recap to all the events that happened. The series of events that occurred. So that said, let's get into it here. Let me see if I can make this thing here work. Right. All right, so we're going to start today with Kilauea Weekly Summary. This is a V1 camera courtesy of the USGS Hawaiian Volcano Observatory, and it's showing the last week of the lava lake. And so this V1 camera has been repositioned in the past few weeks, and now it's got this nice view of the lava lake, and you can see it's been circulating. The main vent is off the screen here to the bottom right, but the path is coming in that direction from bottom right into the middle of the screen here. Kind of like that. Yep. So you can see some spattering occurring over here. You see this whole other pit that's been cascading in and out of that we've been talking about for the last few weeks. It's doing the same thing, and we can see the view of that from the V1 camera in the background here. So you can see overall not a whole lot of overflows, not a whole lot of difference. You do see this first part of the week with the lava level dropping down. This is really zoomed in, so you know it's actually a good amount of meters or yards or what have you. But in the grand scale of how much the volcano is filled and how much lava is in this crater under the crust, it's really just a slight difference in elevation there going up and down right here. So pretty minor change there. That's the V1 camera. Let's see if I can get it all on the screen here over the past week. And we can look at that from the wider angle. This is a KW camera for the past week. And that main area we were just considering was right there. That's that we're zoomed into that little pit, and we're looking now for other areas like ooze-up flows or other lava flows that occur around a perimeter of the crater. And there's some at low levels occurring there. There's one big flow that comes in. It's in the last couple of days here in this northwest quadrant of the crater, and this view north is in that direction right there. All right, so you can see overall same pattern, lava in that main active lake area, some glow coming from the vents, a lot of gas coming out. You see the weather blowing around all over the place. It was a fairly rainy week on Kilauea, so a lot of steam coming through a lot of this week here. But overall, nothing really unusual to speak of. The viewing's been good still. It's been what it's been in the past few weeks. Before we get to that, we'll finish off our weekly summary here by looking at the F1 camera, the thermal camera over the last week. And here it is. You can see similar, this active lava lake area rising and falling, and then more clearly the ooze-up flows and around a perimeter that seemed to slow down for those couple of days over the last weekend when the lava level dropped. So that's what we have on Kilauea, the view currently of the F1 camera, showing that ooze-up flow active right here in the southwest. That was actually few hours ago, so let me reload it here, and here as of the last 10 minutes it's still active over here, and one over here in the southeast corner as well. Right, so as far as our monitoring signals, let's see if we can get some monitoring going here. All right, for the past over 7 months now, the lava has been filling the crater. You can see the rise was fairly quick at first, and then a gradual rise coming up. We were measuring a rising and fall of the lava lake for a little while in the middle here, but on average, coming upwards and still coming up, and that's the pattern still today. zoomed in a little more closely for the last week, you can see that it was fairly flat with no change over the first half of the week, and then came up and then flattened a little bit and came up some more. And this somewhat follows if I keep scrolling the page down here. The tilt pattern that you see, right? So we had a deflation event 1 week ago when we were doing this broadcast, and so a little bit off the chart here, but it came down something like that. Right? And so it's stayed down for a little over 2 days, came back up, lava level came back up along with it. Minor variations all through here, and just within the last 24 hours here, it's started to come back down again, and perhaps is shallowing out here. So it seems like it's occurring just about weekly right now. And you can see that during this time of the deflation is when we're having this flattening trend of the lava depth as well. So this is back to what it was normal. In the past, we were actually seeing some of this flattening during the high stands. We'll look at that here when we'll scroll down to the last month. So zooming out to the last month, here is what we're just looking at, just that piece. So before that flat, there was another flatter area back in here, and then back in here. So some correspond to the big deflation inflation events. This is a proxy for pressure in a volcano, for those of you guys who may not have seen it before. So dropping down, coming up, that's a normal process that occurs over and over again. You can see here's a couple that went down and up where we didn't have, any deflation inflation events in this period with a little bit of a flatter. And we thought maybe the lava was sprawling out across the whole crater floor at that point in time, since it is spreading out across a large area and filling below the crest as well. But now we're back to that pattern of having a big deflation inflation event last week, and that similar pause and gaining of depth, and we might expect to see that once again here. Now, as far as the gas coming out goes, it has been corresponding more or less with that pattern as well, with that little caveat of the possible sprawling out in the last couple weeks there too. But overall, one thing to note here is that these two plots on the screen at present, if I scroll it up enough, you'll note that they actually are ending 2 days apart here, right? So there's a little offset, right? So this low gas point corresponds to this deflation event. It's a little offset. So still, you can see the gas levels have been fairly steady with little variations that correspond to deflation inflation events. Sometimes seeming to decline more, sometimes seeming to rise more. This deflation inflation event here, on the 28th, this corresponds to right in here or so, and with this high point being back in here. So normal variation of the SO2, and that means that the lava level coming out is likely fairly constant, fairly steady. And of course, this is the largest hazard we have of the volcano here. We're gonna transition here to talking about the main hazard in the volcano, which is the gas coming out of the summit here. One station in a closed area you can see is spiking not quite to 10 ppm in the Sandhill area. But if we go to the national park, well, first let's look at the VOG summary here from the University of Hawaii Manoa. You can see that with a source at Kilauea here and the current weather patterns, gas is spreading across South Hawaii and mostly staying there. A little bit of fog pathing through Kīlauea area and the saddle as well. But it's not as bad as we've seen in some weeks, and maybe that's aided by the fact that the rain does help clear out the air too. So let us know if you have on-the-ground VOG report from your area. Drop it in the comments. Let us know what's going on in your part of the island. It's always better to have an in-person report than be trying to extrapolate from a map here. In any case, it looks fairly normal as far as what we've seen in the past few weeks as well. Within the national park, everything's been in the green. The gas plume blows to the southwest for the most part, where this gray triangle is pointing, and that station I showed you that's in a closed area is down in that area right in there, right downwind of it. Everything else is not really having those issues for the most part. Sometimes with slack winds, lack of winds, or some changing winds, you might get some of that around the national park area. So if you're sensitive, of course, check the National Park website for all the precautions, all updates and closures, all of that. But otherwise, we will switch to talking about what is possible to view in the national park now. So as always, we're pointing out on a map here, Kanakakoi overlook area is right in here. That's our main site for looking at the lava within the pit right over there. There are also viewpoints here in the north and over here in the east as well that you can see different parts of the crater and the activity depending what's going on where. So jumping right into it, thanks once again to our contributors, Two Pineapples. This is a time-lapse of a stream they put out on May 1st. So this is as the lava is coming back, rising back up after that pause and pressure and drop in lava lake level. So this is sped up about 30 times, and you can see circulation from the vent. In this case, the vent's back in here, and it's lava's flowing back towards our direction. Zooming out to give you guys a better perspective of where that is. If you do come, you want to bring binoculars or zoom lens or that kind of thing. And of course, rain gear. It's been pretty rainy recently, but even still, these guys are managing to zoom in and see quite a lot of activity in the crater. At this point in time, just a little bit of activity around that main active lake, but sometimes they were also see activity back in here or activity back over here. Or so this is the whole range of where activity is possible in this view from the national park. It's right. Okay, we've also used the S1 camera as a proxy for what you can see, showing similar but slightly different angle of the lava lake rising and falling. The west vent complex is over here. You can see some glow and all the gas coming out. We can see that large ooze-up flow popping up in the background all across here before it flips to whoop across the week here once again. So that's all the outer stuff. Still an interesting glowing hole over here east of this central island right in there. So we'll zoom into the main active lake area just to see it from the other angle here. And this is nice to see this entry point, this chute of lava from the main embayment or main active lake area into this smaller pit here, which also drains away, right? So the lava is coming into here, it's draining through the chute. It drains under the crust here. It seems to drain under the crust right over here because of the spattering source here, and then there's a third spot right over there. And so that's the general gist of it right there. Okay, since you can see other parts of the crater, I thought we'd switch around to the B1 camera to wrap things up. So that lava lake area is way back over here. So if you're actually looking perhaps from the east side, Volcano House side of the caldera, you might not see this entire view because a lot of this front part here of the camera is going to be blocked off by the cliff. But you might see this activity in the background from this angle. Right? So in any case, this camera gives us a view of that, as well as what you might be able to see from like a Koi overlook more on this side over here. So we'll play that for the last week. You can see most of the activity, as I mentioned before, is back over here at the main lake area. With a little bit of activity coming around the margins once in a while. Right? So right in here. All right, so that is our viewing report. And with that, we'll go long-term patterns, and we'll start with our GPS and move into our earthquakes. And so GPS, real quick here. Long-term trends haven't changed at the summit of Kilauea. It's still extending. It's extending maybe a little bit faster since March than it was prior to that. But it's not doing it nearly as fast as it was last year, even during that eruption. So it's extending, but not at a significantly alarming rate or anything like that. It does show that magma is still coming into the shallow system and spreading apart, besides coming up into the lava lake area. On the East Rift, so not Pu'o'o, you see a contraction still going on. You see some short-term variations going on there, but overall it's all contraction, sometimes little lows, but no change in the pattern here. So coming to the earthquakes, which is also a long-term geophysical process. The earthquake is a short event, but the long-term patterns that we're interested in here. So we're looking at the 1 year of earthquakes, and you can see that it's been fairly uneventful here over the last few months. This was the last peak where we had those earthquakes deep under the summit, and then activity that preceded the beginning of the eruption back in here. So nothing since then really to look at. Over the last month, we had a series of earthquakes at Pahala. We'll mention those briefly here today. We'll get into those a little more maybe next week. But also nothing alarming, unusual going on there. Over the last week, here's the map. Pahala, south flank, very slight on the summit. Notable, we've had a few of these deep offshore earthquakes. I'll scroll down here to the cross section, and you can see these are between 40 and 50 kilometers down. A long way. It's deeper than the Pahala quakes, so we've seen this area be activated and in the past for the last few months, and we want to get into it a little bit more, but we'll do it next week since we want to talk about 2018 more this week. All right, but there it is. Nothing alarming either. It's just showing that it's active and alive down there. Right? Over the last month, here's a bigger pattern. You can see more in Pahala, more on the south flank, and see more of these deep patterns of earthquakes that occur under the summit caldera area and a little bit south offshore as well. All right, so that's the plot there. We'll look at the map. As far as a map of Kilauea, the pattern is overall not that alarming. We look at Mauna Loa. We see earthquakes are still happening there as well. Here's Kilauea, it's fairly sparse. Pahala. It's maybe low on the low end of normal. We've seen much busier weeks than this in Pahala, but overall that's within the context of having it be elevated activity in the last couple of years as well. The largest earthquakes in the past week, we had two 3.1s. They were both down here in that Pahala area, both about 32 kilometers down. Both of those blue dots right in there. So those are causing some shallow earthquakes too, but for the most part, these are all fairly deep things and no magma to the surface, nothing to worry about there. Interesting connections of the pathways, which we'll get into next week as I keep promising. So we'll look at Mauna Loa. First at the earthquakes here. Mauna Loa, even with the earthquakes at the summit, they're happening at normal rates, nothing unusual with the changes going on there. We did notice that we had a couple of larger events shown by the step and moment here, a couple magnitude 3s that occurred over the last couple months here, but those are just a normal cycle of the flank moving and nothing really to be alarmed about there. So that's the half of our Mauna Loa summary. We're not going to go into Mauna Loa too much today, but also looking at the caldera distance across that upper part of the summit, across the summit caldera. Not a lot of change here over the last few months after having seen a slight little rise at the end of last year here. So not a whole lot in Mauna Loa. And of course, I have to mention all this information is really just rephrasing, restating what the USGS Hawaiian Volcano Observatory is saying. So mahalo to USGS HVO for providing all the data and much of what we're showing you guys here. And before, yeah, we don't really have any new metrics to share with you guys here. It's all fairly standard, but this is our source. We want to mention one more thing here is the volcano watch of the week. And this week's article is a reflection on the past 4 years since 2018 to 2018 eruption. So they discuss their reflections here, and this will be posted on hawaiitracker.com if it hasn't been already. Featured here is this photograph with 4 panels. One panel showing the 2008 to 18 lava lake, and then where are we going here? The whole collapse pit after the 2018 events, and then the infiltration of water into that pit, and then the mobilization of lava and refilling of lava into the crater right in there.
Yep, it's on Tracker. I just posted the link in the chat.
All right, so all right, fantastic. So that's the USGS Volcano Watch, and go in there, and they're reflecting on what's going on, and there was no hard answers in here, right? But there is a interesting thing here, a consideration at the end here. Are we returning to a period of prolonged seismic activity similar to the 1800s? Or will future activity be more similar to that in the 3 decades prior to the start of the pool eruption? This period was marked by numerous small and short-lived periodic eruptions that alternated between Kilauea's summit and rift zones. It's not possible to know what exactly lies in store for Kilauea's future, though history and modern monitoring tools provide clues. So that is it. Review of the past 4 years at the summit, and we're going to get into it here a little bit more as far as the Lower East Rift Zone eruption timeline here, visual history. But a couple final things here to note. One national park, and we'll get to our mahalos here. So the national park has released one more video in our series of Experience a Skillful Work, Ike Hana no Eao. And this month's feature is Single Gourd Drum. Ole. So check that out. I won't play any of it here today, but you can find that also linked on Tracker, I believe. And it's a third of a series of things you could try at home to learn by doing. Is the whole point of this, right? And this kind of came out of the pandemic, but of course, the series is still very, very useful for anyone to learn at home and learn by doing. One more note. Oh, that one didn't work. It's my reload here. Give me a second to make that better. Pull this on here. We have a alert from the national park. The lights in Nahuku Lava Tube are temporarily out of service. So if you're coming to visit the national park, be prepared to bring a flashlight. If you're coming to see the activity at the summit before dawn or after dark, you're going to want a flashlight anyways. So makes it a little bit more adventurous in the cave there. So you guys can check that out. So yeah, Dane, that's what we got, and we can say mahalo starting with maybe Kaleo's.
Do definitely want to thank Kīlauea. They've been a longtime supporter of the stream. They have 2 locations now, one in Paoa, one in Orchid Land. That's a new location in Orchid Land. They got indoor, outdoor dining, takeout options. They have traditional dishes with a little bit of a unique twist. So definitely check them out. We appreciate their longtime support. Also want to thank a super chat from Chris, $20. He says, Chris says, thank you for all your hard work and dedication keeping us informed. Appreciate the support, Chris. We do have a couple questions here. Let's see. The first one is from Richard, and it's about the down drop block. Can the entire down drop block potentially lift up and become one of those islands like we saw in the beginning of the eruption?
I guess if enough lava came out, that's possible. But it would have to come out those cracks on the other side of it, right? That doesn't seem likely. The island that we saw early in the eruption seemed to be caused by all the froth that from the high fountains of lava when it first started springing out of the ground. That, and it was falling into that pond of water, and there was something to do with the water and the steam, and that's probably what made it extra bubbly. When we think about that thing actually being buoyant and floating, it's something to do with that process, even if I can't nail down exactly what it was. So I would lean towards probably not. But if enough lava came out of that crack on the other side and it dislodged that whole block, then maybe it could turn it into an island. That would be massive, though. Massive.
Yeah, it would be huge.
It'd be like unheard of, unlike something we've ever heard of.
We do have a $35 super chat from longtime supporter Gary Bryan. It says, thanks, Phil and Dane, for these updates. Appreciate the support, Gary. Next question comes from Chris, who's asked, curious when you will get to do another flyover video of the lava lake. I assume that's from a chopper, since drones aren't really allowed.
Yeah, we essentially no one is allowed to fly a drone in a national park apart from the USGS. Right, and the USGS goes through the proper permits, and so when they release videos of those flyovers is when we can share them as well. If we do have anyone that's been flying over in a helicopter or an airplane or anything like that, and we're and they share their footage with us, then we're also happy to share that. But if that's you, please send your footage in. Otherwise, we're still waiting, and we don't have anything to share right now. But not a whole lot has really changed apart from the level has just kind of come up, right? Maybe the best thing we can show you is that I can pull it back up, that volcano watch. Let me come back into this view here. Let me try to zoom it way in. You can compare a little better there, the before and after of the lava versus the water. That's all we got right now is these kind of comparisons, long term rather than what's changed in the last few months or so, right? Or from the camera. That's why we do all of the time lapses from all the different points of view, and we do bring those through the whole eruption once in a while, right? But not today, since we're trying to move on to 2018.
Aaron's asking about Scott. That's our normal pilot and that we go up with, and I believe last I heard he was having repairs done on the plane. So I'm not sure where that stands. That makes it harder when that plane's gone out of commission. Let's check one last time. I think we are out of questions, though. We will do one more segment at the end after we review a little bit of 2018.
All right, so let's see if I can make this work. This is trying something a little new here, and let's give me a second to get it lined up. Because I have this as a separate presentation here. So all right, with me, here we go. So we're gonna go through, hopefully kind of briefly, we realize there's a big human impact to this. The point today is just kind of recap. It's been a while. I know maybe some of us blocked a lot out. If if this is something traumatizing to you, then please feel free to skip it. But the point is just to kind of remind ourselves of the progression and clear up some of the fogginess and the blurriness of memory that comes with time here. So, all right. Everything began in 2018. The sequence kind of began back in April, really. April 13th, 2018 is when we had the first lava lake overflows of the year. You can see that bottom panel here, lava was flowing across what's about 2/3 of Halemaʻu crater. This was actually a series of overflows in the 25th, 26th. The previous one was a few days before that. And during that same interval, the whole floor of Pu'o'o, 12 miles away, was also getting uplifted. So all of that to say that the volcano was really pressurized. If we look at this cross-section, USGS cross-section here, we see that of all the different plumbing parts of the volcano, at this South Caldera chamber, the Upper Halemaʻu chamber, the rift zone, everything, all the system, all the way from Pu'o'o to the summit, everything was completely pressurized to the point of spilling out the top, essentially. So April 30th was when it really was obvious that it was essentially the point of no return, as far as I'm concerned. When we saw the first major domino that set things off, and that was the collapse of Pu'o'o after a 4.2 earthquake on April 30th. It set off a kind of pinkish, grayish cloud there you see photographed that was seen across a lot of Lower Puna. And people saw that, they knew something was going on at Pu'o'o, and soon afterwards is when the earthquakes actually followed. So we'll get to the earthquakes here, but here's a before and after of Pu'o'o, April 18th and May 3rd, showing that upper part of the crater floor up in here. Fully collapsed, right? You actually had two different pits, and you can see the new collapsed pit and go with both of them. After the fact, they came back and measured this. I want to say over 1,000 feet deep. A pretty dramatic difference at Pu'o'o there. As a little footnote, there is evidence of a little eruption pre-collapse. This is on a west flank of Pu'o'o. So this is looking towards the east. The lower east rift zone would be off in that direction over there. There's this crack with steam coming out of it on the side, and there was one spot the USGS came here and released this photograph of, looks like fresh lava had come out of that crack. Not very much, not very far, but you can see the pressure was enough to actually burst up out of the ground at Pu'o'o, and then essentially burst down the ground, burst underground across some barrier. And so here's that similar cross section. Here's that summit caldera complex. East rift zone going this way, and a blockage might have existed somewhere over here prior. And once that broke with the April 30th event, The magma then was able to reoccupy the lower east rift zone, moving past lots of other stored magma bodies, some of which it pushed up to the surface, and that's what drove the beginning of that eruption right in there. I've shown here on the bottom the tilt plot from those times for those of you guys that haven't been following with us for that long. The scale in microradians here on the side goes from -200 to 0 to 200, so this is actually 1,000 microradians in total, top to bottom. So the green line is Pu'o'o. We saw April 30th, a big collapse of Pu'o'o right there, and a big inflation actually. That was probably that little eruption event. Then a collapse, and then we saw on May 4th a big earthquake on the south flank, the 6.9. And it was actually after that event, after this 4:30 event, that we saw the blue line on the summit start to come downhill. That's the deflation of the summit, right? Which first is the draining of Halemaumau lava lake, and then the collapse of the crater walls. And then eventually it becomes collapse of the caldera with a stepwise up and down starting on the 15th or so. Okay, this is the initial activity. This is essentially that month of earthquakes leading up to the eruption. And you can see that there are times that we had bursts of lots of earthquakes underneath the summit. Right, we knew that magma was coming in. We saw earthquakes flaring off in the upper east rift zone and the upper southwest rift zone at the same time, as well as under the summit, over and over and over. The south flank was actually pretty quiet much of that time, right? Until that 420 event. And afterwards, we saw a bunch of earthquakes proceeding from that area down towards Leilani Estates, where lava then emerged on May 3rd, right? You see the south flank earthquake there shown is not the one that's to come the next day on May 4th, so we'll come to that here in the next interval. But to recap that first week saw 15 fissures cross 3 miles, 5 kilometers of the subdivision. Lava took 36 homes in the first 5 days in Leilani Estates and Lani Puna Gardens. See, that's more sluggish, slow-moving lava that was the first to come out, but still across such a wide area that it had a devastating impact there at first. And of course, of those first 15 fissures, Fissure 8 was the most active and did flow out and consume a good amount of those houses. At the summit, lava lake started to drain. Here's a picture on May 6th of a much deeper pit. The lava had just been overflowing up on this upper rim a few weeks before that, 1 week before here. Right? So lava started draining out fairly quickly, easily visible by May 6th. We'll show you guys the thermal time-lapse here of that draining sequence on May 6th. May 7th now. Actually, for May 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. So it was going slowly the whole time, just more obvious as time went on. So the next week of seismicity was dominated by that big earthquake at 6.9 right through here, when a flank moves about 20 inches. And that essentially is what allows the next phase of the eruption to occur. I mean, magma had pressurized so much that it was actually essentially in the rift zone, pushing on the south flank. As magma was draining from the summit into the rift zone, it exerted additional pressure on that south flank, and it seems like the combination of all those things set off the south flank with that 6.9 earthquake. So from research after the fact, they believe that this blue area was the area that slipped here. Some of the areas slipping more than others right through here, and see everything, all these arrows are GPS vectors on land pointing towards the ocean of the direction of movement of the south flank there. Another graphic showing the rift zone itself as a schematic colored bar here. And it's showing the coloration of where there was a net loss of material and a net gain of material. And so as this earthquake moved to the south flank and centered here, everything moves off in this direction. all the magma that had been built up in this area, upper East Rift Zone and the summit, was then able to flow down and accumulate in this area. So net gain in the lower East Rift Zone, and net withdrawal of the upper and middle East Rift Zones and the summit of Kilauea as well. Okay, a couple graphics here. That's a little busy, but focus just on the top one first here. This is an image from IRIS Consortium, Educational Consortium, and they're showing here a structure looking from the center of the island off towards the south, right? So Mauna Loa is up here, Kilauea summit's right there. Showing a melt zone from the mantle coming through the base of the mantle and tectonic lithospheric plate here, crust. And all these black lines are faults in that shallower, brittle crust there. So the magma coming up through all of that with these interaction of the fault zones and the summit occurring right in here. So I've essentially tried to Frankenstein an image together down here that puts all this together, right? So the black lines are the faults right here on the bottom, the south flank moving off in this direction. And the magma coming from the summit through the rift zone is making use of these vertical, subvertical areas of the faults, right? And that's what the rift zone essentially is. Another way of explaining the rift zone is this area of pulling by gravity that's opening it, and then it being injected by magma as well. It's the magma using the fault zone as a pathway in these areas. And that's what that rift zone really is. So the south flank moves, that allows the rift zone to open even further beyond what had already happened at Pu'o'o, where magma had gone towards Leilani. The ground had already been opened, lava was already coming out when the 6.9 happened. And when it did, that essentially opened the valve, but it opened it far enough upstream that it took a little while. So that next week was mostly dominated by activity in the lowest East Rift Zone. This is Fisher 17 you're hearing. Those exploding sounds were constant. And this is the fissure that put out the stickiest lava. I gotta turn that sound off. It's a little too triggering, maybe still. But yeah, that's where that stickiest lava came out, and there was actually some stored lava that got pushed at the very, very far edge, but that's more of the chemistry story. We'll leave that for some other time, and we've discussed that in the past as well. Keeping to our chronology here, at the summit, collapses begin on May 15th in earnest with large, dark ash plumes. The first few of those actually go up 30,000 feet and issue some aviation alerts in response. But ultimately, that was the peak of it, and there were no larger explosions beyond that, mostly gas driven from the magma that was built underground. Down in the lower East Rift Zone, as that large surge of magma from the summit region arrives down in the area, fresh lava surfaces, we were up to 23 fissures, 8 of them erupting at once. Fast-moving flows reached down to the ocean, just east of Mackenzie Park. Take 42 more homes in total between Leilani, Lanipuna, and Pohuiki area down in there. In that time, we had these methane blue flames filmed coming out of the cracks. This is a drone image from the USGS that's looping through here, right? From the fissure and looking down towards the coastline far away, and really interesting how fast the lava got down there. Our friend Ikaika talks about having seen big albizia trees floating in the water ahead of that flow that were just charred on the outside. The lava pushed them so fast downhill and out of the way. So that was the third week. The fourth week, Fissure 8 reactivated. 6-mile long flow, 10 kilometers, consumes 153 more homes. Some of the other fissures keep spattering more in a strombolian activity, but really it was Fissure 8 that you see here. That was the story of the rest of the eruption beginning in this fourth week here. And I'm generalizing a lot. I'm just really trying to make some big picture reminder here, yeah. All right, so week 5, the lava channel is formed. Lava funnels down Kapoho in 2 days. Then the whole Kapoho area gets taken out beginning here. 319 homes that week. Kapoho Bay, Green Lake, Waiapai tide pools, Champagne Pond, all in that 5th week, end of May to the 1st week of June. There it is, Fissure 8, since rechristened Ahu Aila'au. Big lava channel. Just one part of that what ended up being 7 to 8 mile long lava channel pouring into the ocean there. All right, summit collapses continue. This is June 6th, week 5. This is I thought this was more interesting to see now in the hindsight of the last 4 years of what's happened at the summit. You can still see the parking lot over here on the left side of the image. So this is not fully through the full Kilauea collapse yet. The whole down-drop block is yet to form all over here. But you do see that inner pit of Halema'uma'u, that lowest part of the collapse starting to form already there. Still collapses were ongoing. Meanwhile, weeks 6 through 8 down in the lower East Rift Zone were a little more stable. Once lava had overrun Kapoho and established an ocean entry, it widened the ocean entry across a 3-mile, 5-kilometer width. It extended the coast outwards half mile, 800 meters. By this point in time, we're up to 580 total homes lost. The peaks of the fountains come around this time at about 260 feet or 80 meters. Right there, you can see that fluid river of lava issuing from the vent there. Okay. There is that 8.5 mile lava channel that was in that later part of it when it had rediverted. Maximum speed, this has been discussed, but the number I have written down here, 17 miles an hour, 27 kilometers per hour estimated max speed. That's I think the USGS measured. Some people have did other similar measurements and came up with similar values. As far as estimated depth, 20 to 80 feet, 5 to 15 meters, varying depending on where along the path of the channel there. All right. Panoramic view of it. So panning from Ahu'aila'au around Green Crater up over there to the south. Okay, so the next couple weeks, end of June, first 2 weeks of July, we started to see these lava islands, lava rafts, moving downstream. And eventually they blocked the channel, diverted the flow, and the flow went around the west side of Pu'ukapoho, Green Mountain there. And that unfortunately caused lava to overrun the Kuokala School, Halanui Warm Ponds, a whole new 2.5 mile, 4-kilometer path of the ocean. And that's because a lot of these pieces were getting broken off from the channel walls we were seeing, and a lot of these channel walls were getting undercut, and chunks would fall off, and you can see them getting rafted downriver there. And sometimes you'd see them emerge out of the lava like we saw in that first frame there. So that gives you some idea of the depth in some areas there. And there are Behovita Halanui. There's what it looked like after the lava overran it. Okay, this is Cosmo SkyMed, partial caldera collapse here, a view from space, showing over time the collapse of the caldera. See it coming in there. So as it gets to the end, I can point out the features we now know. There's our down drop block all over there. There's that inner pit of Halema'uma'u, which has all been filled by now, and now we're actually lapping on to these areas over here on this edge right over here. I can play it one more time. You can see how that down drop block forms later on in a process, right? It kind of grows from a a smaller radius to a slightly larger radius to a slightly larger radius, right? We see that this innermost deepest pit collapsed first, and then it was this next slightly bigger area, and then it was eventually that whole area. All right. Ahu'aila'au, Fissure 8. By the beginning, last 2 weeks of July, coming into August, started to fluctuate. We started to see surges following some collapses. 2 to 3 hours after the collapses, the lava would overspill the banks. During the lulls, the lava might harden in the channels and slow the flow. Here we've documented in at least one area the relative difference in elevation of lava in the same channel from the same point of view. So you can see here different aerial views of empty and full. Coming down to the river. See much of that eastern part of Kapoho entry had actually cooled off already, but the pattern was one of more fluctuation. We'd worry more when these surges would occur. The lava would break out and establish a new path out and possibly take out more stuff, but fortunately didn't happen beyond the one time. All right, the last 4 weeks, the last month of the eruption, August 3rd to September 6th, the fountains dwindled fairly quickly once the summit collapses ended. August 3rd was the last collapse. The channel drained for 3 weeks, still putting lava into the ocean by Pohuiki Bay, still threatening the bay. Ahu'aila'au collapsed, refilled, collapsed a little more, refilled a little more. And ultimately it was over by the beginning of September. Still, it was a stressful time, even as lava drained towards Pohuiki, to think how far might it come and would it take out the boat ramp. At the time, we were concerned about the lava being the main aggressor there, right? And what happened after the fact was the sand is what really blocked it all off from the currents. So the aftermath, this is Leilani Estates in Ahu'aila'au. This was taken shortly afterwards, right? So since then, there's been some little bit of revegetation on the margins, especially. But you can see here the grid of the subdivision disrupted by this new natural feature that's cutting off all the roads here. So in the aftermath, a lot of gas venting in a lot of areas, even uprift, as well as eruption sites. That went on for a while. It's diminished a little bit, but it's still something that we'll have more learned to live with and has gone away completely, as far as I understand. Some satellite images before and after. This is Leilani, zoomed in on the right into Ahu'aila'au area, right through here. The grid beforehand, view after, and the zoomed out view here. So really it was that eastern part of Leilani Estates that was overcome by lava. Of course, everywhere else in Leilani was also overcome with the stuff falling from the air and the earthquakes and the gas and everything else that went along with it. Lots of branches we could go and talk at length about, but I'm just trying to keep it at a high level here as far as overview. Lamipuna Gardens on the left, Kapoho on the right. Before and after, you see how much more dark is on the image there. It's really heartbreaking to see these areas. All the community there displaced, right? And not a huge amount has changed since. All right, a little bit more of the recap here. Flows by week. We have here yellow was that first week of eruption. Moving to orange, the second set of fissures that occurred in that lower part of the rift there. Third week, ocean entry. Fourth week, pushing east towards Kapoho. The fifth and 6 weeks, right, where it stays. And you can see we get into the purples. in the later parts as the lava delta is expanding to the side. Recapping the sequence of eruption there. We can look at another view here. This is our time-lapse of thermal images. So about one a day or so. Shows the progression of what was flowing and hot at what point in time, even as it spread around and covered more and more ground. Lava flow thicknesses, this is the preliminary map. So I'm missing some of the data here. I think there's a better one that I could find, but this is what I have right here right now. So you can see that in many areas where we have the greens, we're talking up to 50 feet in the greens. We're talking in the yellows up to 80 feet. Orange is up to 100 feet. The darkest red here from 180 to 919 feet. So in the offshore areas, 919 feet. Huge amount of lava building a giant ramp offshore to extend the coastline out and further. In the onland areas, you see most of the thickest areas are these oranges here in Kapoho. 80 to 100 feet in some of those areas. Otherwise, you're looking at the yellows, 66 to 82. So some really significant buildup of lava there. So it's not like you can dig down and excavate anything. You have to essentially start anew on top and deal with the fact that this thick flow is going to hold heat longest where it's thickest as well. We did have the Nautilus live expedition publish this image here, showing in red the addition of lava offshore. Right? So you see a little bit here at the Mackenzie area. See one lobe in the east for that initial Kapoho lobe that came around Green Mountain to the north and east, and then you see that second Pohoiki Halanui lobe that came in second after that diversion there. So everything matches up. Total homes lost, I think the number I got to was 716 permitted. A lot of other things unpermitted that we haven't seen research exactly nail down. This is Dane's map. Go ahead, Dane.
Yeah, that wouldn't be exactly permitted. It would be they had a tax map key. They were taxed by the county as having a residence on them. Some of those were unpermitted, but they're recognized anyways, right?
Right. That's the number we're hearing from the county also.
Yeah. Right, and I do believe that number because I think my number of permitted homes ended at like 580, and then the rest were unpermitted, and then it got grayer and grayer the further you went into it. But yeah, that's roughly the number. But I heard people say like, oh, it's got to be 1,000 with all the unpermitted places, and I'm like, no, that I don't know where they would be hiding, because the satellite imagery we had was pretty good.
Yeah, and there is research coming out on this that's gonna accommodate for all structures and not just like homes. So like something it'll try to account for like all the other stuff that's maybe not
kind of weird.
Yeah, like extra house, carport, whatever, all those things. Anything
greenhouse that somebody sleeps in on the weekend. Or even stuff like that.
Yeah, things. Even just greenhouse. I mean, even all those things should be counted at some point, also as well. And so there's different ways of counting. And so I think that there is a different way of counting. That's we're still awaiting publication of the research to share officially what those estimates are. But yeah, a lot more than that. Yeah, 30 miles, 50 kilometers of road covered, 875 acres of new land, 13.7 square miles, 35 square kilometers covered. 1 billion yards, 1.2 cubic kilometers erupted. Over 60,000 earthquakes over the whole sequence. 4,400 over magnitude 3 in those 3 months. Sounds crazy to say now how much happened there, right? Here is Pohoiki, right? The central image right in here. You can see that original bay for any of this eruption. It's coastline, all the way back, lava's going in the ocean. Up here in this image right here. So afterwards, everything has just been totally filled. The bay itself still exists as a bay, but you can see all the sand that's piled up in there. We've discussed this in the past as well. Different view of the sand blocking the boat ramp. Thermal ponds now behind the beach. So leave that at that. Before and after, we've shown different views of this in the past. In blue was the profile of the caldera before collapse, and red afterwards. And here's the beginning and ending images of that sequence that we showed you guys, that satellite view from. So to wrap it up here, we'll just show you guys that one final time lapse. It's a time lapse taken of the whole caldera collapse from April until August. So you see the lava lake overflowing here at the beginning. You see ash clouds coming up. You start seeing the ground drop out and vanish. Then you start seeing the slivers that are still leaning against the edges start dropping down as well. And eventually there's our down drop block. Before and after comparison. Same view. It takes a while to train your eye to see what's the same, since there's so much different in there. But all right, that's a short recap there. Short visual recap of what happened in 2018. There's obviously a lot more we could take it in lots of different ways. That eruption lasted 3 months, so not that we're going to be recapping 2018 constantly over the next 3 months, but there's plenty of time to pull things out here and there and talk about other aspects of it, right?
Yeah, updating constantly over 3 months was what we did last year.
Yeah. So yeah.
We do have some questions on this if you want to get into those, or if you got any more.
No, that's great.
Somebody's asking if we have any footage of Green Lake being taken. I put a link in the Telegram, time queued for you. It will show that.
Okay.
Also from the Drones On series, which I'm going to be releasing pretty much the final episode at the end of the eruption tonight. It's kind of just a brief recap post eruption.
Work can be complicated. Asana makes it simple. It's the only work management tool that keeps all your teams synced.
Oh, we get the ads, guys.
Yeah,
Lost
sorry.
in the dark. But you
Messing me up here.
You give people hope.
Silver team, on me.
Approximately 10 a.m., we start to see this large billow of steam coming from near the leading edge of the flow front. And it's just a humongous amount of steam. Basically, anybody that was familiar with the area, saw this steam, knew what it meant. It meant that lava had reached the Green Lake. Lava had gone around the Kapoho crater, found a depression, and from there started to fall with a little lava fall into the lake itself. The steam plume coming from Green Lake would last roughly 3 hours before it ceased. And by then, the lava had basically evaporated all of the water from within the lake. This was rough to see for many people, including myself. I grew up going down to Green Lake commonly, and to see it go out like this was rough. At approximately the same time that lava began...
All right, I'll just pause it right there and pull us back. Yeah, and that's a good little segue to the fact that you're releasing another Drones On today, yeah?
Yeah. Yep, the final one. Get to go over the last couple weeks of the eruption when Fissure 8's mostly done by this point. We still got lava flowing into the ocean.
Right.
All right. So what else we got in terms of questions? Status on the boat ramp is a question from Sean. What's the status on the boat ramp? And still in the money got released from FEMA, so the planning process and the actual designs are underway. Now it's about getting all those approved and then breaking ground probably a couple years out.
Yeah, there was a update released by Kilauea Recovery, I believe, at the last revitalized Puna. That's got all the details of that, and so I have to put all the exact dates, but we can maybe find that and share that with you guys, or go look for that April event, revitalized Puna.
Yep. I think we got one more question over here. Oh. we got through most of them, though.
All right, yeah. We'll be sharing some other
Do you
things.
think? How long do you think those zones will stay hot? Is a question. Assume these are the areas that we're talking about where the lava is thickest.
Yeah, the calculations that we've seen, where it's thickest, it'll be decades. Decades. So
Decades, yeah.
the answer is essentially years to decades. Almost everywhere.
Right. And anywhere that has the cracks, the where the fissures were actually at, those can stay hot even longer potentially. Hard to say on those.
Yeah,
like the 1955 vents, those didn't stop steaming until 2018 when it redid all the plumbing underground and all the heat and everything.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, I believe that is it on questions. We will be doing another release of the Drones On series immediately after this, premiering it. And yeah, 3 hours for Green Lake was roughly about how long it took. It went pretty quick.
Yeah, it was pretty fast. Yeah, dramatic, huh?
Yeah, we had. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say we have a $10 super chat from Matt Hackor. Says there's apparently some tremor on the East Rift Zone last week on one of the update logs.
Update logs, which
You'd have to. I would assume it'd be a seismograph. You're seeing tremor.
Yeah, well, so I mean, it's we'll have to. I can look into it a little more here. There are stations that show tremor from other factors besides magma movement, right? There's one in particular that is notorious for being right next to the quarry. So,
yeah,
that's the first thing that comes to mind. A little bit. I don't see anything that's consistent across all the stations, and that's really the first thing to note there, right?
Right.
If there is something occurring that's happening underground, it should show up at more than one station, and it should be something more pervasive. If it's something more localized, whether it be a quarry or a helicopter flying overhead, or a car driving nearby, or someone working on her house, or a rainstorm, or a windstorm, or whatever it happens to be, instrument malfunction of any kind. All those things usually get kind of more clarity if you can see, ideally, more than 2 or 3, like 3 or 4 stations showing the signal. So I don't see anything like that right now, and I haven't seen anything in the USGS reports. We're happy to follow up more if you can give us more info in the comments and stuff like that.
Yeah, we'll look at it after the stream. Definitely take a look. But yeah, I think that does it for questions today. We'll get the Drones On going. It's a short one. And yeah, we'll be back next week, same time, same place, Thursday, 5 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time, unless something pops off and goes crazy, which don't really expect it to do right now. But if it does, we will go live with the latest. All right, until next week. Back to you, Phil.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I mean, if you are looking for more of that in-depth info on the eruption, besides everything we did in 2018, the whole series of Drones On that Dane's put out. I don't know if he's mentioned this. Is the last episode, Dane? The last one, yeah. So that essentially completes the series.
Yep.
You can go back to the beginning.
Trying to mix it up. That's one of the final things to do with it is trying to turn it into like an hour and a half.
Yeah, and then
watch through a single video.
Until then, there is a playlist on YouTube that you can follow if you want to get into it. But then you're gonna get all the separate intros and all that, which is all good. But there's plenty of content up there from the past. Even our 2018 updates are on our channel as well. If you want to jump in and see what that craziness was like, it was real guerrilla style back then. Really kind of shocking compared to where we're at today here. So
yeah.
We will cover all the other aspects in the future, like the hub. We'll talk about the hub and the community, and we'll talk about. We did a talk story this past week with what's the group? Pohaku Pilemaka. on Facebook. That's shared on our feeds as well. We'll probably bring that back around in the next few weeks to share with you guys as well. Some of the other voices besides ours, since you guys hear us all the time. It's nice to hear from the community, I think. So all that will be upcoming, and anyone who was affected by 2018, didn't included, our thoughts are still with you guys. Like, it's stay strong, keep pushing. There's still a lot of recovery to come, but what 2018 taught us was that we're strong together, and we're here for each other. So that's why we still do this. And yeah, we'll end on that as far as talking about 2018. So check out Drones On coming up next on YouTube. Until next week, from Hawaii Tracker, he's Dan DuPont. I'm Philip Ong. Aloha, everyone.